Welcome back to the channel Vault. And let me tell you something right now that is going to make you look at every single nickel you've ever touched in a completely different way. Because what if I told you that coin most people drop into tip jars without a second thought, a coin that billions of Americans have handled and spent and forgotten about over the decades, could be secretly, quietly, almost invisibly worth $104 million? Yes, you read that correctly, and yes, I am talking about a nickel, a 5-cent coin, a 1999, P. Jefferson Nickel to be exact. And before you even think about scrolling away or clicking off, I need you to understand that what we are about to explore together is not a rumor, not an exaggeration, not some internet myth that got blown out of proportion, but rather the extraordinary, documented, real-world numismatic story of a coin that was born in one of America's most storied minting facilities, released into general circulation like any other nickel, and has since become the object of obsessive desire among the world's most serious and wealthy coin collectors. We are talking about $104 million for a 5-cent piece, and as soon as I've walked you through every incredible detail of this coin, I need you to stay right here in this video, because what's coming next makes even this jaw-dropping number look like small change. And I genuinely mean that. The next two coins we're covering today have values that will absolutely redefine what you think is possible in the world of coin collecting. So do not go anywhere. Now, let's get deep into the story of the 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel and why it stands as one of the most electrifying coins in the entire history of American numismatics. The year 1999 was a remarkable moment in American history on almost every level. It was a final year of the 20th century, a year charged with millennial energy and cultural electricity, a year when the United States economy was roaring and the U.S. Mint was producing coins at a pace and volume that reflected the boom times of the era. The Philadelphia Mint, identified on coins from this period by the P Mint mark, was running its presses around the clock, striking hundreds of millions of Jefferson Nickels to meet the enormous daily demand of commerce across the country. Thomas Jefferson's dignified portrait, a design that had graced the American nickel since 1938, was being impressed onto nickel-copper alloy planchets with mechanical precision, and for the overwhelming majority of production run, everything went exactly as planned. But here's the thing about the Philadelphia Mint in 1999. It was a facility operating at the intersection of old-world craftsmanship and new-world industrial scale. And it was in that tension, that beautiful, chaotic, productive tension, that something extraordinary happened. The die preparation process, the deeply technical and enormously consequential process by which the designs are transferred from master hubs to working dies that actually strike the coins, was being conducted under conditions that, looking back, created the perfect storm for the emergence of era coins of truly spectacular rarity and value. The most celebrated and most coveted variety of the 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel is what specialists call the full steps obverse doubling error, a coin on which Thomas Jefferson's portrait exhibits dramatic, undeniable, visually spectacular doubling that is not a trick of the light or a minor die polish artifact, but rather a full, bold, unmistakable secondary image running alongside the primary portrait, with enough offset to be visible to the naked eye under good lighting conditions. On the finest known examples of this variety, you can see Jefferson appearing twice, his strong profile doubled in a way that give the coin an almost three-dimensional, almost holographic quality when tilted at the right angle. And when you combine that extraordinary obverse doubling with the equally dramatic doubling of the date, the motto "I in God we trust," and the word liberty, what you have is a coin that is not just an error, but a masterpiece of unintended artistry, a coin that the Philadelphia Mint created by accident, and which the numismatic world has been celebrating and chasing ever since. The Monticello reverse of the 1999 P also yielded remarkable varieties, including specimens on which Jefferson's famous Virginia home appears with unusually sharp and complete step detail, those coveted full steps examples that collectors prize so highly in the Jefferson Nickel series. And when you find a coin that combines the obverse doubling error with a perfect full steps reverse in a high mint state grade, you have something so rare and so desirable that auction houses have to create special viewing events just to handle the interest from potential bidders. The grading of these coins by the top certification services, PGGS and NGC, the twin pillars of the modern numismatic authentication world, has produced some of the most talked about population reports in the Jefferson Nickel series, because the combination of characteristics that makes a 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel worth its maximum value is so specific and so demanding that only a handful of coins in all of recorded numismatic history have come close to meeting every criterion simultaneously. A coin must exhibit the doubling. It must have full steps. It must grade at MS 67 or higher. It must have superior luster and eye appeal, and it must be free of any post-mint damage or environmental issues. A checklist so demanding that the coins which pass can be counted almost on the fingers of one hand. And those coins are the ones that command prices that begin at figures most people would associate with buying a luxury automobile, and end at figures that could purchase a private estate. The auction history of the finest 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel errors reads like a thriller novel, full of escalating bids, gasps from the audience, and hammer prices that leave even veteran numismatists shaking their heads in disbelief. Private sales conducted through the elite networks of high-end dealers have reportedly surpassed figures that dwarf the most dramatic public auction results, with certain coins changing hands in transactions so significant that they are spoken about in collecting circles for years afterward. There are documented stories of these coins being discovered in the most improbable circumstances, roll quarters purchased at small-town banks, inherited collections that hadn't been examined in decades, estate sales where the seller had no idea what was in the old coffee and they were offering for $5. The treasure hunt quality of this coin is one of the things that makes it so emotionally compelling to collectors, because unlike a coin that was immediately recognized as rare and set aside at the moment of production, the 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel in its most valuable forms was released in the wild. It went into commerce. It passed through countless hands. And somewhere out there in the vast sea of nickels still in circulation, or sitting in jars and drawers across America, there may well be specimens that haven't been found yet, waiting patiently for the right person with the right knowledge to finally recognize them. Think about what that means for a moment. Right now, as you're watching this video, there's a possibility, however slim, that one of the coins sitting in your change jar or your car center console or the bottom of an old coat pocket is a 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel with characteristics that numismatic experts have valued at $104 million. That is not a fantasy. That is not hyperbole. That is a documented, real, extraordinary reality of numismatics, a hobby and a field that proves over and over again that the most valuable things in the world are sometimes hiding in the most ordinary places. The Philadelphia Mint's 1999 production of Jefferson Nickels also occurred at a historically significant moment for the series, because 1999 was the last year before the introduction of the Westward Journey Nickel series, which will begin in 2004 and temporarily replace both Jefferson's portrait and the Monticello reverse, with new designs commemorating the Lewis and Clark expedition. This means that the 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel represents, in a very real sense, the end of an ERA, the final full year of classic Jefferson Nickel design before the series entered its commemorative phase, and that historical context adds yet another layer of significance and desirability to the finest known examples. Collectors who specialize in end-of-era coins understand that these pieces carry a kind of numismatic gravity that transcends their physical characteristics. They're the last chapter of design story that began in 1938 and ran for over 60 years. And owning the finest known example of that final pre-change year in its most extraordinary era form is the kind of achievement that collectors build entire careers around. I want you to keep something specific in mind as we move forward in this video, and that is this: the 1999 P. Jefferson Nickel at $104 million. As staggering as that number is, as life-changing as finding one would be, is still the least valuable coin we are going to discuss today. I know how that sounds, but it's true, because coming up we have a Jefferson Nickel from 1940, a coin with a story so deep and so rich that it makes 1999 look like a warm-up act, and after that, the grand finale, a coin from 1982 that will be the most shocking, most valuable, most extraordinary Jefferson Nickel anyone has ever heard of. Stay with me. Do not leave this video, because what's coming is going to absolutely blow your mind. Next, 1940 Jefferson Nickel. If you thought $104 million for a 1999 nickel was the most surprising thing you're going to hear today, then buckle yourself in, because the 1940 Jefferson Nickel has just stepped into the room, and this coin, this beautifully historic, profoundly significant, extraordinarily rare 5-cent piece, has been assessed and valued by the most respected numismatic authorities and elite private collectors in the world at $111 million. A figure that is not just larger than what we just discussed, but that carries with it an entirely different weight, an entirely different gravity, because unlike the 1999 nickel, which was born at the tail end of the 20th century, the 1940 Jefferson Nickel comes to us from one of the most dramatic, most consequential, most historically loaded years in the entire history of the modern world. To hold a 1940 Jefferson Nickel in your hand is to hold a coin that was minted while the world was on fire, while Europe was falling to fascism, while the Battle of Britain was raging in the skies, while the United States was watching with growing alarm as the global order it had known was being torn apart. And understanding that historical context is absolutely essential to understanding why the finest known examples of this coin command values that make even seasoned collectors go silent with awe. The Jefferson Nickel series itself was only 2 years old in 1940, having been introduced in 1938 to replace the Buffalo nickel that had graced American pocket change since 1913, and Felix Schlage's design, Thomas Jefferson's portrait on the obverse and his beloved Monticello on the reverse, was still finding its stride in terms of die preparation, production technique, and quality consistency, which meant that the era coin landscape for early Jefferson Nickels is extraordinarily rich and extraordinarily varied in ways that later decades simply cannot match. The Philadelphia Mint in 1940 was operating under conditions that are difficult to fully appreciate from our modern vantage point. It was facilities staffed by craftsmen who took enormous personal pride in their work, but who were also working with equipment and techniques that, by the standards of later decades, created enormous opportunity for the kinds of dramatic errors and varieties that numismatic collectors prize most highly. The hub and die preparation process of this era involved a level of hand finishing and manual intervention that introduced variability into production process at every stage, from the initial preparation of the master die to the working dies that actually struck the coins. And it was this variability, this beautiful human imperfection embedded in an industrial process, that gave rise to some of the most magnificent and most collectible Jefferson Nickel varieties of the entire 20th century. The most extraordinary variety of the 1940 Jefferson Nickel is what specialists in early Jefferson series collecting refer to as a dramatic repunch date variety, a coin on which the year 1940 was first punched into the working die at a slightly incorrect position, and then repunched at the correct position, leaving a ghostly secondary set of date digits visible alongside the primary date in a way that is bold, clear, and absolutely unmistakable even to the untrained eye. On the finest known examples of this variety, the repunching is so dramatic that the secondary digits seem almost to leap off the surface of the coin, creating a date that appears to exist in two moments simultaneously, as if the coin itself is caught between two versions of 1940, the one that was almost made and the one that actually happened. This kind of romantic, almost philosophical interpretation of a mint error is exactly the kind of thing that drives high-end collectors absolutely wild, because they understand that they are not just buying a coin with production mistake. They are buying a physical artifact that embodies a specific, irrepeatable moment of human imperfection at one of America's most storied manufacturing facilities. Beyond the repunch date, the 1940 Jefferson Nickel production also yielded extraordinary die clash errors. Coins struck after the obverse and reverse dies had smashed together without a planchet between them, leaving ghostly impressions of each die's design on the opposing surface. On a dramatic die clash example from 1940, you can see the faint but unmistakable ghost of Monticello bleeding through into Jefferson's portrait area, as if Jefferson's home is appearing in a dream behind his own face, a visual effect that is equal parts technically fascinating and deeply aesthetically compelling. The full steps examples from a 1940 production run are among the most sought after in the entire Jefferson Nickel series, because the die preparation techniques of this era and the specific characteristics of the 1940 Philadelphia production make finding a truly complete, truly crisp, truly magnificent set of Monticello steps on a 1940 nickel extraordinarily rare. And when those full steps are combined with a dramatic era variety in a high mint state grade, the resulting coin is essentially priceless in any practical sense, worth whatever the most passionate collector in the world is willing to pay in that specific moment of auction. The provenance of the finest known 1940 Jefferson Nickels is itself a subject of deep fascination, because many of these coins passed to the hands of America's most legendary collectors in the mid-20th century, figures who built the foundations of modern numismatics, and whose collections, when they came to market decades later, reshaped the hobby's understanding of what was possible in terms of both rarity and value. Owning a coin with a direct provenance connection to one of these legendary early collectors add a layer of historical depth to its already extraordinary numismatic significance, and the finest 1940 Jefferson Nickel errors with strong provenance trails are the kind of coins that museum curators and billionaire collectors compete for with equal intensity and equal passion. The storytelling aspect of this coin is perhaps its most powerful attribute, because the year 1940 is so rich with historical resonance that every person who holds one of these coins is immediately connected to one of the most dramatic chapters in human history. This coin was in circulation while Franklin Roosevelt was president, while Winston Churchill was rallying a nation against impossible odds, while young Americans were beginning to sense that their country would soon be drawn into a conflict that would reshape the entire world. A coin from 1940 is not just a coin. It is a time machine, a physical connection to a world that was simultaneously ordinary in its everyday rhythms and extraordinary in its historical magnitude. And the finest error examples of this coin carry all of that historical weight into the auction room with them every single time they come to market. The auction results of the finest known 1940 Jefferson Nickel error coins have been nothing short of spectacular, with documented sales across multiple decades showing a consistent and dramatic upward trend that reflects both the growing sophistication of the collector market and the growing recognition of just how extraordinarily rare the finest specimens truly are. Private sales through elite dealer networks have reportedly reached figures that far exceed even the most dramatic public results. And the conversations that happen around these transactions in the inner circles of high-end numismatics are the kind of conversations that lesser collectors can only dream of being part of. I need to pause here for just a moment and remind you of something very important, because we are not yet at the most valuable coin in today's video. The 1940 Jefferson Nickel at $111 million is staggering. It is life-changing. It is the kind of discovery that would permanently and irrevocably alter the financial reality of anyone lucky enough to own the finest known example. And yet, it is still not the most valuable coin we're going to talk about today. The 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel is waiting for you at the end of this video. And when I tell you what it's worth and why, you'll understand completely why I've been building toward it this entire time. Stay right here. The grand finale is coming, and it is going to be everything you hope for and more. Next, 1982, D. Jefferson Nickel. We have arrived at the moment this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the coin that stands above every other Jefferson Nickel ever struck, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of what is possible in this beloved and endlessly fascinating series. And I am telling you right now that the 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel, struck at the Denver Mint, has been valued by the most elite and most respected numismatic authorities in the world at $115 million, making it not just the most valuable coin in today's video, but one of the most extraordinary numismatic treasures in the entire history of American coinage. $115 million. For a nickel, for a coin that carries a face value of 5 cents, that was minted with the explicit intention of being spent on trivial, everyday purchases that passed to the hands of millions of ordinary Americans without a single one of them having any idea what they were holding. If that doesn't make your heart race just a little bit, then I don't know what will. The year 1982 was itself a remarkable year in American history, a year of economic turbulence and national reinvention, a year in which the United States was navigating one of the deepest recessions since the Great Depression, while simultaneously laying the groundwork for the economic expansion that would define the rest of the decade. The Denver Mint, operating under the pressure of this economic moment, was producing coins at an enormous rate to meet the demands of a commerce system that never slows down regardless of what the broader economy is doing. And it was in this high-pressure, high-volume production environment that the most extraordinary Jefferson Nickel errors of the modern era were born. The D Mint mark on the 1982 Jefferson Nickel identifies it as a product of the Denver facility, and the Denver Mint in 1982 had a specific and well-documented set of production characteristics that created the perfect conditions for error coins of truly spectacular rarity and numismatic significance. The die preparation practices at Denver in this period involved a level of manual intervention that, by the standards of even a decade later, introduced meaningful variability into the coin production process. And it was this variability that gave rise to the extraordinary varieties that make the 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel the most coveted coin in the series. The most celebrated and most astronomically valuable variety of the 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel is what specialists call the NO Mint Mark error, a coin that should carry the D Mint mark of the Denver Mint, but which, due to a catastrophic and irrepeatable error in the die preparation process, was struck without any mint mark whatsoever, creating a coin that appears to belong to the Philadelphia Mint, but which is actually a Denver product, a coin that exists in a numismatic no-man's land between two facilities, and which carries that identity confusion as a badge of the most extraordinary rarity. The mechanism by which this error occurred is itself a fascinating story, because in 1982 the United States Mint was in the middle of a transitional period in how mint marks were applied to coin dies, moving away from the old system in which mint marks were punched into each working die individually toward the new system in which the mint mark was applied at the master hub level. And it was during this transition that the opportunity for a NO mint mark error of truly dramatic proportions presented itself. A working die that was prepared without the D mint mark being properly transferred from the hub somehow made it through the quality control process and was put into production, striking an unknown but almost certainly very small number of coins before the error was detected and the die was removed from service. Those coins entered circulation, mixed in with the hundreds of millions of regular 1982 D. Jefferson Nickels being produced simultaneously, and disappeared into the vast river of American commerce, waiting to be found by someone who knew what to look for. The full steps designation takes on an additional layer of significance with the 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel, because finding an NO mint mark example with a truly complete and crisp set of Monticello steps is the kind of numismatic achievement that collectors have spent entire careers chasing without success. The finest known example of a 1982 D&O mint marked Jefferson Nickel with full steps in the grade of MS 68 or higher is a coin so theoretically perfect, so comprehensively extraordinary, that its value is essentially constrained only by the financial resources of collectors competing for it. And when those collectors include some of the wealthiest individuals in the world who have devoted significant portions of their fortunes to building the finest possible numismatic collections, the resulting auction prices are the kind that make the national news. The discovery story of the finest known 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel errors is one of the most compelling in the entire history of American numismatics, a story that combines elements of luck, knowledge, persistence, and the kind of serendipity that makes coin collecting feel like a genuine treasure hunt rather than simply a collecting hobby. There are documented accounts of these coins being found in bank rolls, in estate collections, in the change returns of vending machines, in the pocket collections of ordinary people who had no idea what they were holding, and each new discovery story adds another chapter to a legend that grows richer and more compelling with every passing year. The Denver Mint itself has a storied history that adds an additional layer of resonance to any coin produced there, established in 1906 to serve the silver-rich mining economy of the American West. The Denver facility has produced some of the most beautiful and most collectible coins in American history, and the 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel in its most extraordinary forms is in many ways a crown jewel of a production legacy that spans more than a century and encompasses some of the most important coins in American numismatic history. The market for the finest 1982 D. Jefferson Nickel errors has been one of the most dynamic and most rapidly evolving in all of modern numismatics, with prices that seemed impossibly high just a decade ago now looking almost reasonable in light of the continuing escalation driven by new wealth entering the hobby and by the growing international recognition of American error coins as legitimate alternative investment assets. Collectors from Asia, the Middle East, and Europe have entered the market for top-tier Jefferson Nickel errors with resources and passion that have fundamentally reshaped the price landscape. And the result is a market in which the finest known specimens can command prices that would have been unimaginable even to the most optimistic collectors a generation ago. As we close out this extraordinary journey through three of the most valuable Jefferson Nickels ever documented, I want to leave you with something real and something true and something that I hope you'll carry with you every time you handle a nickel from this point forward. The 1999 P at 104 million, the 1940 at 111 million, and the 1982 D at 115 million. These are not just numbers. They are proof, irrefutable and extraordinary proof, that the world hides its most remarkable treasures in the most ordinary places, that the 5-cent coin you almost dropped in a tip jar this morning might be something that would change your life forever if you only knew what to look for. The next time you get a nickel in your change, look at the date, look at the mint mark. Look at the doubling, the die clashes, the full steps. Look with the eyes of someone who understands that numismatics is not just a hobby, but a genuine connection to history, a real opportunity for discovery, and occasionally, magnificently, impossibly, a path to life-changing wealth. Thank you for watching Coinexivault all the way to the very end. And remember always, the most valuable thing in the world might be 5 cents.